Before we get into the word today, I want to give you a little bit of an update on our church's kind of direction. So I've been getting a whole lot of questions, and it does seem kind of like we kind of keep thinking we're going to do things and saying we're going to do things, and then are we going to do them? And I know it's a lot of questions. We want to just full transparency. We want everybody to know kind of what's happening. Our elders are always talking about how we can execute within our values towards our mission, right? And our mission is, as a church, we exist to help people find the Father and experience the kingdom and look more like Jesus every day. That's our mission, and all of our programming and all of our teaching and all of our hiring and all of our budgets, everything needs to be driven by that mission. That's what God has put us here to do as a church. And so that day-to-day means we do the stuff that churches do day-to-day. But right now it feels like there are a couple of kind of special things that we need to address in this season of our church history beyond just our kind of day-to-day operations. One of them is an opportunity, and one of them is a risk. And so the opportunity is there's a lot of people moving out here who need to find the Father and experience the kingdom and look more like Jesus every day. And that's an opportunity for us to fulfill our mission. And then the risk is, this is going to come as a surprise to you guys, but I'm not getting younger, right? And it's surprising to me that I ain't as good as I once was, as the famous song says. And I think I got a couple more weeks in me, but we don't want it to sneak up on us, right? And so if I drop dead one Sunday, right? Or if I get sick or if I get fired or something, we don't want it to be a mad scramble for the church to be finding a new lead pastor. So that's a risk to our mission. So beyond just our regular stuff of operating within our values towards our mission, we've got this special opportunity of people coming out here, and we've got this special risk of our pastor getting old. So I want to kind of address like what our plan is for both of those things. So for the opportunity, right, for this idea that people are moving out here, it really comes into two different kind of categories. And one is this facility. Obviously, we know that this facility needs to be expanded if we're going to really fulfill that mission. We've got to do some things differently. Right now we're serving about 800 people on a weekend, and we think we probably on this property could handle maybe 1,000 people a weekend. But if we're going to do that, we need to make some changes. We need to add some space. Again, it's because of our values and what we're specifically called to do. If we are home church and we're about relationships and we're about families, we've got to get better group space than we have right now. We have to have better spaces for our groups, and we have to have better spaces for our kids. Right now, you may not know this, but about 25% of our congregation today is under 11 years old. So that's awesome, that's exciting, but that also means we need more space, and we need better space for our kids. And so, one, the facility needs to be upgraded so that we can really, really do what we're called to do with maybe 1,000 people a week instead of 800 people a week. And then the second thing is, once we get to 1,000 people, then what? Right? We can't just lock the door, right? Sorry, like Noah's Ark, you had your chance, looks like rain. Can't do that, So it's like, well, how are we going to continue to reach more people if we're saying we can only really minister to 1,000 people a week? And the answer to that is that we want to start looking at church planting. So that's a way we're going to address this thing. We're going to try to get this place big enough and strong enough and good enough so that we can really, really minister and pursue this mission for about 1,000 people a weekend. And then when we get ready to that point, then it's going to be time for us to start talking about planting another church. So not having 1,000 services, because what that does, part of this is the pastors. Like for me, I can only be divided into so many pieces. And then what happens is everybody gets too small a piece, right? So it's not just the building. It's also the people here. It's also the pastors here. It's also people having groups and fellowship. Right now, this is great. This is whatever this is. This is 300 people, right? It's really hard to have meaningful conversations and dialogue and do life with your 300 best friends or your 800 best friends or your 1,000 best friends. And so we've got to think about how to split this thing into smaller groups. And so our idea is, we do something with the facility, and then we start planting churches. Then to address the risk of me getting old, we need a succession plan. Right? We got to talk about who will take my place and how we're going to find them and when we're going to start that process. So there's been a lot of fasting going on and a lot of praying going on and a lot of talking going on. We did a survey so that we send it out to you because we want to hear from you. Like, what ideas do you have, and what's God speaking to you, and all that stuff. And thank you. So we got hundreds of responses back from that survey, and it's been super, super, super helpful to us. And that's kind of one of the ways that we hear from God, right? Is through you. And I will say this: the survey was asking questions kind of specifically about these things, and it also had some open-ended like comment spaces. And a lot of you gave us some really good comments in those spaces that weren't really pertinent to these three things, but maybe were other things, and that's great. Like, we should do more of this, or we should have less of this, or maybe this is the direction, or something like that. And I have those, and we're reading those, and we're praying about those, and we're talking about those. But I want to tell you that we're not going to be replying to those. And I'll tell you why. I wanted this survey to be anonymous, because part of it was about money, and I don't want to know who gives what. So I don't know who wrote what comment. So it's impossible for me to respond to all of those things. So if you have like a one-off thing, a specific thing that you want to talk about, just call me. Just call the church, make an appointment, or we talk on the phone, or text, or email, or whatever you want to do. I want to talk to you, I want to hear from you, but I'm not going to be replying to your answers on that survey, and that's the reason we're not. But I do want to address kind of what you said and what we're thinking about these three things. So the facility upgrades, here's where we are. Proverbs 22:3 says, "A prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. A simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences." So it's not hard. It's a couplet in the Bible, right? It's not hard to see which of those we want to be, right? Yeah, it feels like a little bit with the building, we've been stuck in a little bit of a pattern, doesn't it? Every so often, it's crazy in here and people are sitting on the floor. We don't have a place to put our first graders or whatever it is. And we say, oh man, this building is shrinking. We got to do something. And then something will come up. Yeah, but what about the sewer? And so it kind of goes back burner, right? And then a few weeks later, it's, oh my gosh, we got no place to put third graders. What are we going to do? We got to do something about this shrinking building. And then something else comes up. Yeah, but if we grow, what if that gives us too much impervious ground cover with our parking, and that means that we have to do a detention pond, and that means we don't have enough space for our kids' building. So it goes back on the back burner. And then a couple of weeks later, it's like, oh my gosh, this building is getting too small. What are we going to do? And then something comes up. Yeah, but what if we have to do a deceleration lane on the highway? That's $500,000. That could kill our whole deal. And so it goes back on the back burner. And it's like, well, weeks later, we got to do something. Our building's getting too small. Yeah, but what if we start this and we find a spotted salamander or something, and we can't do the thing that we set out to do, and we wasted all this money and all that stuff. So it's like we just keep kind of, you see the loop. It's like, we should do something. Yeah, but we should do something. Yeah, but we should do something. Yeah, but. So we're trying to figure out, like, what do we do about all these yeah, buts, right? Because right now what we keep doing is kicking it down the road, right? We just keep kind of saying, well, let's pray about it, right? Well, we've been praying about it for quite a while now. I think God's heard us. So there's all these potential deal breakers, right? There's all these potential red flags. And so what we're going to do between the highway department and zoning and permits and trees and civil engineering and the septic and endangered salamanders or whatever, we want to get out of this routine. We want to move forward, right? We want to aggressively, wisely, right? Like energetically, conservatively, right? We want to move forward. Listen, we take this seriously. This is not my money. Right? And I'll tell you something else. It's not your money. It's God's money. And we want to be careful and we want to be cautious, but we also I don't want Jesus to come back and we got $10 million in the bank. You know what I mean? We want to go, man. We want to go, but we want to be smart. And so here's what we're going to do. Instead of this cycle, we've hired two companies. One is called Marksman Contractors, and they're a building contractor company, and they do a lot of church work. And we're hiring them to do pre-construction work. They're going to talk to the highway department. They're going to talk to TEQC. They're going to talk about salamanders. They're going to talk to civil engineers. They're going to talk to the tree people and the city and the state and everybody and find out, like, are these red flags deal breakers for us? Because if they are, let's not invest $1 million and then find out we can't do it. Right? So we're going to spend some money to do all that. We've also hired an architect because what we're going to do depends on what we're going to do. Right? We have to get engineering done. We have to figure out if this property can accommodate this facility that we want to do. And so while those two people's jobs over the next 4 to 6 months is going to be to really finish out plans, let's really get plans, let's really get this thing down to what it's really going to look like, what it's really going to cost, and whether it's doable. And so our plan is that by about August-ish, we should know, like, we're calling it go or no go, right? Is like, are one of those red flags going to kill us? And if one of those red flags aren't going to kill us, what are we going to build and what's it going to cost? And then this fall, we can begin talking about, well, now we'll have all our plans, we can put them out to bid. and we can get specific numbers, a maximum guaranteed price, and all that stuff on what it's going to cost to build it. We can hire a contractor, and we can start talking about the money. So that's kind of where we are. We think, seems to me like if this goes the way I think it might go, and I kind of praying that it does go, then in January, we should have a shovel in the ground. And this should probably take about 12 to 18 months. So that's about the time frame. That's about where we are. Between now and then, there's going to be some headaches. Like, a few weeks ago, we had a bunch of first graders, and we just had to throw them over the fence, man. We just don't have... We got to do what we got to do, to kind of keep moving forward. So you can always have more kids, but we got to figure out how to go forward without being foolish, right? We do not want to get into this thing, and all of a sudden the highway department says, oh, by the way, you need a deceleration lane. That's $550,000. And it's like, oh, man, we're back to the drawing board again. So we're going to go back to the drawing board first. We're going to check these boxes. We're going to eliminate these red flags. We're going to find out if it's doable, and if it's doable, what it would look like and what it would cost. Then we're going to decide what to do. Hopefully at the end of this year and the beginning of next year, we're going to start doing it. So that's where we are with the facility upgrades. Church planting. This year, my goal really for church planting is just to learn about models. There's a lot of ways to plant churches. A lot of you have been involved in church plants, and we could just straight up plant a church. We could just, hire a pastor and start a church. And maybe they meet right here locally and they alleviate some of the space stuff that we have. Maybe they meet in Blanco or somewhere near here or something like that. So there's just straight up church planning. We might do multi-site with video. That's how this church got started. We might start with house churches. I'm really interested in what that would look like as home church. What would it look like if we also had like a little network of house churches that maybe met in smaller groups? We might help another church get started. Maybe there's a church that wants to plant out here. I can tell you from experience, when you plant a church, one of the hardest things is facility. Like, where is it going to happen? You know what? Maybe another church wants to get started and they could have this building on Saturday nights. We could actually plant a church that happens in this same space. That's a potential model for us. We might look at starting with just discipleship groups. Maybe we start with a bunch of discipleship groups in a certain area, then they combine and form their own church. We might talk about partnering with an existing church. There are churches in this area that are really struggling and really, like, maybe they have a building, but they don't have people coming, or maybe whatever. Maybe we could partner with some other churches. And so there's just lots of different models of how you would plant a church. And again, we don't want to rush into this thing and do it wrong, but we also don't want to just sit back. So where we are with that right now is this year, we're meeting with other pastors and other churches and other experts in this field, like best practices. How should we do it? How should we do it? And I hope that by the end of this year, we'll kind of have an idea what our model will look like. And then when we get to that magic number of 1,000 or whatever it is, we'll kind of be ready and we'll kind of know how to do it and how to pay for it. Then the last thing is succession planning. And so again, it's the same idea. We don't want to just rush out, right? Because I need the work. I don't want to just rush out and just do this thing. So before we start making a plan to hire a replacement for me, we want to start thinking a little bit more about the model that we're using for our executive pastor leadership team. So right now, that team is basically the lead pastor, me, and our executive pastor, Mike. And so he's doing most of the operational stuff and the programming stuff, and I'm doing most of the vision and the teaching and that kind of pastoral stuff. And so that's working pretty good. So maybe all we do is we replace me, and that's it, and it's clean. Maybe Mike takes my place and we replace him. Maybe there's a better setup. Maybe the executive pastor team should be more than 2 people. Maybe we should have a discipleship pastor. Maybe we should have a family pastor. Maybe I still have some small role where they wheel me out here once in a while. I don't know. But anyway, our goal, again, for this year, this is kind of a learning time for us, right? So this is a time that we're meeting with different people, and we're just trying to figure out what is a good model for us. What should the executive pastor team look like here? And maybe it's the same as it is now, or maybe it's not. But we want to kind of start nailing that down, and then a succession plan will be created for each model. So if we decide, well, there's 3 different ways we might do this, let's come up with a way to do the succession planning for each one of those things. And then maybe in a couple of years, maybe 3-4 years, we start actually executing it. Meanwhile, we have an emergency succession plan in case I get hit by a truck or something just horrible happens like that. So that's a lot, and I'm kind of ambushing you with all this information. I know that, but I don't want the church service today to become a business meeting. So I want to get into the word, but this is your home church. And I just feel like we want you to know what's going on. You're part of this. And I don't expect anybody just to be blindly following. I don't know. I just show up and do what Larry says. We want you to understand what's going on and to be prayerful for us about these decisions and weigh in. I mean, if you've got a brilliant idea, then we'd sure love to hear it about any of these things. If you would like to talk to me, I'm not hard to find on email. You can always call me. Most of you have my cell number, or you can always call the church and get me that way, or call the church and talk to Laura, and she'll make an appointment, and we'll go have coffee and talk about it in person. I'd love to hear from you. I want you to know what's going on. Like I said, it's your church, so we want you to be informed. So that's it. That's all the business stuff. If you want to talk more, I would love to talk to you. Let's pray. And if we have time, we'll talk about the Bible today. Jesus, man, we love you. Thank you for all the stuff that's going on. It's amazing to us that you have chosen us to be part of your plan to redeem the world. So thank you for choosing us and calling us. Thank you for leading us and empowering us to do your work. We only want to do everything you call us to do, and only what you call us to do. We want to do everything you empower us to do, and only what you empower us to do. We're not interested in doing anything in our own wisdom and our own strength. We want to be Spirit empowered. So God, will you continue to lead us and guide us and direct us? And please keep putting stuff in front of us for us to attack, to bring your kingdom to this world. And now, Father, as we open up your word today, I just pray that you'll just, like we always say, open us up and show us what we need to see and teach us what we need to learn and change us today as we look at your word and who we are in you. In Jesus' name, amen. There's been an interesting phenomenon the last 20 years or so, selfies. How many of you have ever taken a selfie? Don't lie, you've taken selfies, right? I mean, and here's what's funny. 20 years ago, selfies didn't exist. Isn't that funny? And they started in the 90s. And now I can't imagine a world without selfies. Here's one of me. So handsome. So handsome. Let me ask you a question. If you're an expert in selfies, would I look better if the perspective were higher looking down? Or would I look better if the perspective were lower looking up? Yeah, because if you go lower, you know what you get. Right? Nobody wants that. Yeah? And if you go higher, that's better, because look what happens. Now we get gravity working for us. Yeah? And so, yeah, and even beyond that, there's even tricks. Like, I don't know if you guys know, like, about filters, but like I can slim myself and dye my hair. Show them, Matt. Look at that. Huh? Yeah. I can take away wrinkles. I can get a better tan. I can brighten my teeth. Show them, Matt. Yeah. Yeah. I'm going back to youth pastor now, baby. I can even add a little sparkle to my, yeah. That's it. So here's what I want to say. You look at me through those filters. I'm looking pretty good. Yeah? And the truth of it is, that's not really me. You know, that's not who I am. I'm not that skinny, and I'm not that tan, and I'm not that smooth, and my teeth aren't that shiny. That's not really who I am. But I'm also not that fat neck guy. You know, that's not me either. So I can't really judge who I am by how I really look in these pictures. And that's just talking about a picture. But you know what's way more important is how I see the real me and how I see who I really am. Because my identity, like who I am, impacts how I see my value, and it impacts how I see my potential, and it impacts how I see my future, and it impacts how I see other people, and it impacts how I see God. And it's really important that we see the real us, the real us. Because if I see myself wrong on that low end, right? If I see myself as less than I really am, there's just all kinds of problems that come with that, you know, shame and frustration and depression that all comes from me seeing myself lower than I really am. Fear could come from that, where it's like, well, I can't do that. God's calling me to do this hard thing. I can't do that because I'm too low. It also might show up in me trying to impress everybody all the time. You know, a lot of people that you think of as being really arrogant or really cocky, what the really problem is, they're insecure. It's from them taking too low of a view of themselves. Or I might try to drag other people down with me. right? Maybe it'll make me feel better about myself if I could put other people down. So it's really a problem if I see myself wrong on the low end, but it's also a problem if I see myself wrong on the high end. Because that brings in a whole nother set of issues. If I think I'm better than I am, well, then I might not see that I need Jesus. That's a problem. Or I might feel like I've got to constantly prove to you how great I know I am. That's a problem. Or I might just feel so superior to everybody that I'm constantly judging people, that I'm constantly putting other people down, that I'm constantly just generally being a jerk. So if we have the wrong view of who we are, we'll end up spending all of our time either discouraged and depressed or afraid, or frustrated and judgy and hateful and bugged with people. And it's all because we're looking at ourselves like from the wrong perspective, through the wrong filter, through the wrong lens. It's like we're judging with the wrong criteria. That's it. We're judging with the wrong criteria, and criteria matters. Look at this. If the criteria I judge by is height, I'm 6'2". Who's taller than me? Let me see hands. Okay. Well, that makes me feel bad, right? But who's shorter than me? Yeah, see, I'm better than all of you. That's a bad criteria. Do you see what I'm saying? That's not a good criteria to use. If our criteria is your physical shape, your physique, how many of you think you're better? Well, first let me show you what you're up against. Matt, can you show that next picture? Just FYI. How many of you have better physique than me? One. Come up here and show it. No, I'm just kidding. What if my criteria is popular? Facebook friends. Facebook friends. I have about 1,200 friends on Facebook. About 6 of them I actually think know who I am. How many of you have more than 1,200 friends on Facebook? Some. Yeah. How many of you have less than 1,200 friends on Facebook? A lot. How many of you think it doesn't matter because Facebook is only for old people? Yeah. Okay. Got it. That's fair point. Here's the thing. There's a million potential lenses. There's a million potential criteria where we can see ourselves through. And each one is a way that we find our identity of who we are and our value of what makes us matter, what makes us important. It's where we find our purpose. It's where we predict our potential. How big is your house? How pretty you are? How popular you are? How educated you are? How connected your family is? What church you go to? What's your political party? There's all kinds of them. And how you see yourself and how you see other people is at least partially depending on the lens that you're looking through, the criteria that you're using to look at yourself. And unfortunately, there are a lot of really bad criteria. There are a lot of really bad lenses that always lead to what we're talking about, this thing of insecurity and depression and fear, or superiority and kind of judginess and being a jerk, like money. A lot of people say, if I've got money, then I matter. And if I don't have money, I don't matter. And if you have money, you matter. And if you don't have money, you don't matter. That's a bad lens. That is a bad lens. Accomplishments. Some people will say, my value is based on what I've been able to do. And that is a bad lens. That is a bad lens. Stuff. I'm not as important as a person down here because they got a big house and a driveway full of cars and boats. I'm not as important as they are, but I'm more important than the person that lives over here. I got better stuff than they do. That makes me a better person than they are. Popularity. I'm telling you, rejection has always been devastating. But now, thanks to social media, it's easier than ever to be crushed because you feel like you're not popular. Looks is a bad lens. A lot of people think, who I am, my value is wrapped up in how I look. I'll tell you a funny story about this. I used to have a friend in high school. Her name was Lori. And Lori was pretty. Lori was pretty. And after school, she went on and did a lot of magazine covers and was in movies and all kinds of stuff. And I remember one day, she and I were at the mall in Albuquerque, and we're walking out in the parking lot, and there's millions of cars, right? And as she's walking through the parking lot, she's going like this. At all the cars, a little smile, a little like that, at every car. And then I realized there was nobody in the cars. Yeah. You know what it was? She's looking at herself in the reflection in the mirrors, in the windows. And she was practicing her smile or whatever. And I remember thinking at that time, what is it I like about her again besides her looks? And I was like, I'm really struggling to remember anything, you know? And then I thought, you know what's even worse than that? Do you know what she thinks is good about her besides her looks? Right? I think her identity was how pretty she is. And I think what she saw as her value is how pretty she is. And here's the problem. She's 63 now. I'm guessing she's not as cute as she was in 1979, right? And if who she is how she looks, who is she now, right? If what makes her important, if what makes her matter, if what gives her value is how she looks, why is she important now? Does she matter now? It's just, these are bad lenses. They don't work. There's a million lenses that people try to use to find their identity, to find their value, to find their purpose, and to judge their potential. Race, success, nationality, politics, religious practices. And here's a really big problem for Christians. Beyond what it does to us, a really big problem for Christians is when we see those things as the criteria for our identity, when we see those things as the criteria that determines our value, when we see our purpose and our potential only through those things as a lens, those things become idols to us. Those things become idols to us, and we worship them, right? We give time to them. We give attention to them. We give dedication to them. We give effort to them that really should be reserved for God. They become God to us. And I know not you, but I know you know somebody who worships success. You know somebody that worships stuff. You know somebody that worships politics with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength. Like those things are God to them. And that's the definition of idolatry. Plus, it's not just how they see him. If those things are what determines who we are, if those things are what determines like what we're worth, if those things are what determines what we can do or what we can become, it kind of does make them our God. So if I believe that my identity is wrapped up in, if I think who I am is dependent on how much money I have, then money is defining me. Yeah, it's deciding my identity. It's deciding my value. It's deciding my purpose in life. And so, yeah, I'm going to worship it. I'm going to believe in it. I'm going to think about it all the time. I'm going to talk about it all the time. I'm going to serve it. I will do anything for it. I'll give my life to it. If I believe that my purpose, if I believe that the reason I'm here, if I really believe that my purpose is being popular, then popularity becomes my God. If I think that my value is determined by what my looks, my physique, my political party, my nationality, what church I go to, those things become God to me. And it's not bad to be pretty, I've heard. It's not bad to be rich, I've heard. It's not bad to be successful. That's not bad. Those are not bad things. Those criteria aren't bad things. We just don't want them to become God to us. Yeah, they're not bad things. They just make bad gods. We don't want to worship them. And we don't want those things to define our identity or our value or our purpose or our potential. Because for one thing, what happens when I don't live up, right? If money is what makes me matter, what if I don't have any money? If my looks determine my value, what happens when my looks go, right? And other people, what if somebody else doesn't live up? Then I'm either going to get all depressed because I'm not living up, or I'm going to get all judgy and hateful because somebody else isn't living up. And the solution is not getting more, right? If your God is money, I'm going to tell you the solution is not getting more money. If your God is popularity, I'm going to tell you that the secret to this is not getting more likes, right? If your God is deep down your stuff, I'm going to tell you that it doesn't matter what car you buy. It doesn't matter how big your house is. It doesn't matter what watch you're wearing. You're never going to get there. It doesn't work. Getting more, getting better, it doesn't work because the criteria changes too much. You know, looks come and go. Finances come and go. Popularity comes and goes. Plus, with those criteria, if those are your God, there's always going to be somebody better to make me feel bad, and there's always going to be somebody worse that I can hate or judge. It's just not good criteria. It's not a good lens. Those are not good gods. We don't need more money. We don't need more success. We don't need more popularity. We need a better God. We need a better God in whom we can, in whom we should find our identity and our value and our purpose and our potential. May I recommend Yahweh, the God of the Bible. And can I tell you, just for a minute, why I think he makes a better God? So for the next few weeks, we'll get into who he says we are, but let's today determine if he should be the God that's determining that, right? Or should I just go with money? Or should I just go with looks? Or popularity? Or political party? Or nationality? Or anything else? I think he's a much better God than money, or politics, or success, or popularity. I think he's a better place to find your identity and your value and your purpose. So let's start by seeing who he is instead of who we are. Let's start by talking about who God really is. And I want to start with one of the most amazing descriptive names of God, I am. If we're going to find our identity, if we're going to find our value, if we're going to find our purpose and our potential in a God, let's start with Yahweh. Let's start with I am. Let's see who he is. Let's see I am. This starts in the book of Exodus. Most of you know this story. This is where we first hear the name I am. And this is where God's people, Israel, are slaves in Egypt. And the king, Pharaoh, is horrible, and he's treating them terrible, and he's oppressing them. And God says, okay, that's it. They've been praying. I'm getting them out of there. So he calls Moses to go get them. And the way he calls Moses is out in the wilderness, and he sees a bush that's burning, but it's not burning up. And so he goes over to say, like, what is up? Something's happening here. And the voice of God comes to him through this bush and says, take off your shoes. You're on holy ground. You guys know the story, right? So he takes off his shoes, and then God tells him, here's what's going to happen. I have heard my people's prayers. You're going to go get them. You're going to go to the people and say, we're walking out of here. And you're going to go to Pharaoh, and you're going to say, God says, let my people go. This is Exodus 3:13. Here's Moses talking. But Moses protested. If I go to the people of Israel and tell them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, they're going to ask me, what's his name? Then what do I tell them? The bush sent me, right? What do I tell them? What do I tell them? And God replied to Moses, I am who I am. So say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. And God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel, Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob has sent me to you. This is my eternal name, my name to remember for all generations. So I am is a really cool word in Hebrew. You guys want to try some Hebrew? Here's the word, ehyeh. It's sort of like heck yeah, but it's not. It's like ehyeh. Ehyeh. And it means I will be. I will be. And if he's speaking to you, we can make the assumption that he is now, right? If he's speaking to you, he is. And he's saying now, I will be. So ehyeh means I am and I always will be. We're comparing this God to other gods, yeah? We're comparing this God to money and popularity and all the other stuff. I am and I always will be. God is and God always will be. He doesn't end like my money does. He doesn't change like my style or my looks do. He doesn't depend on anyone or anything like my accomplishments or my popularity does. It doesn't matter how the world changes. It doesn't matter how I change. He is. It doesn't matter. Regardless of everything else, he will be. So if I get rich, if I get poor, he will be. If I get more popular, if I get less popular, he will be. If I get in great shape, if I get fat, he will be. If I get a big house, if I lose my house, he will be. If the world falls apart, if the economy tanks, if the universe implodes, he will be. He doesn't need anything to create him. He doesn't need anything to support him. He doesn't need anything to sustain him. He is. He's always been. He will always be. Yeah. And when we put that word in second person, it becomes Yahweh. It becomes Yahweh. So Yahweh means like, he am. He is, he will be. He has no beginning. No one created him. He created everything. He doesn't need anything. He doesn't end. He doesn't change. He doesn't depend on anyone or anything. He is the ultimate, only, self-sustaining, uncaused cause of everything. He's completely different than anything else. Look what Colossians 1:15 says. It's talking about Jesus. It says, Christ is the visible image of the invisible God. Now, he's going to get described right now. And I want you to compare this to the other gods that we use to give us our value, to determine our identity, to see what our prospects are, to see what our purpose is. Compare this to money, style, popularity, politics, right? This is what it says about him. He existed before anything was created. He is supreme over all creation. Through him, God created everything, everything, in the heavenly realms and on earth. He made things we can see. Everything you can see, God made. And things we can't see, such as thrones and kingdoms and rulers and authorities in the unseen world. Everything was created through him. And listen to this. Everything was created for him. He existed before anything else. And even now, he holds all creation together. Yahweh. I am. This is a really important name. This is a really important concept. Before we can go on to who we are, we need to see who he is. This idea, Yahweh, I am, I will be, it's what makes God holy. What does holy mean? What does holy mean? Holy means like different, set apart. That's the word everybody likes, set apart, right? Here's everything else, money, success, looks, politics, everything else is here. He's different. He's separate. He's unique. He's set apart. He's different than any other entity. He's different than any other thing. People are always saying, well, the Trinity is hard to describe. It's kind of like an egg. Oh, it's kind of like what? It's not like anything. It's not like anything. God is like nothing. God is not like nothing. He's different than any other entity. He's different than any other God. He's different than any other thing. He's different than any other person. Everyone else has a creator. Everything else has a creator. Everyone else has a beginning. Everyone else changes. Everyone else depends on something or someone for their existence. Everyone and everything else has an end, but not Yahweh. There's no one else. There's no one else like Yahweh. There's no other God like our God. He's holy. He's eternal. He's always. He's forever. He is completely self-sufficient. He's Yahweh. He will be. And I think sometimes I want to get so bad to who I am that we're skipping this really, really important thing of seeing who he is. I think sometimes we forget how awesome he is. And you know who didn't forget? The ancient Jews. Honestly, they honored and reverenced the name Yahweh so much that they wouldn't even say it. It was too holy. They wouldn't even say it because that would imply that they were worthy of having his name in their mouth. Yeah. In fact, when they wrote about him, they didn't even write it. They wouldn't even write his name. Too holy. No, too holy. I can't write it. So you know what they would do? They would take the word Yahweh and leave out the vowels, right? And it would just say YWHW. And then still, what if I accidentally say it? What if I'm reading and I accidentally say it? I can't risk that. So they changed. They started going by his title instead of his name. Yahweh is his name, right? And they gave him a title, Adonai. Adonai. You know what that means? It means like master. It means Lord. In fact, in your Old Testament Bible, when you see that all caps, L-O-R-D, that's translating this word, Adonai. It means he's my master. That's his title. That's his position. I would never say his name. Too holy. I would never say his name. Then they started thinking, even saying his title is irreverent. Even saying his title is not giving him like the honor that he deserves. Even if we say his title, that's acting like I'm good enough to say his title and I'm just not, so I won't. So you know what they did? They came up with a really weird word where they took the consonants of Yahweh, Y-W-H-W, and they put in the vowels of Adonai, A-D-O-N-I. Y-O-I. And they came up with this really weird word, Yahovah, which we've now translated, and now we say Jehovah. And you know what? They probably never even said that word. All that word was like a warning, like, don't say it, right? So they're reading Genesis 1:1, and it said, in the beginning, don't say it, right? They wouldn't even say it. They wouldn't even write it. I think we've lost some of that reverence. I think we forgot how awesome he is. I think we've lost some of our awe for a God that is so amazing. We shouldn't even say his name, because nothing else deserves to be in the same sentence with his name, Yahweh. Because now we say, oh my God, these onion rings are good, right? Oh my God, my feet are so sweaty. Do you see how that disrespects the one, right? Only the true, holy, eternal creator, God of the universe? I mean, oh my God, I just saw a baby born. Maybe, right? Almost. Oh my God, my best friend just died. Maybe. Almost. But God is so holy that it's literally a sin to use his name in vain. And it's vanity for me to think that my onion rings or my sweaty feet deserve to be mentioned along the name I am. And this is why people got so upset with Jesus, right? Some people say Jesus never claimed to be God. You ever heard somebody say that? Jesus never said he was God. This is John 8:58. Jesus is arguing with the Pharisees, right? And they're saying, oh, we're awesome, you know. I don't know if you know who we are, but Abraham was like our great-grandpa. So, and Jesus goes, yeah, I know Abraham. And they go, how do you know Abraham? He was born a long time ago. You were just born. How do you even know him? Look what Jesus says. This is John 8:58. Jesus answered, I tell you the truth. Before Abraham was even born, I am. And look what it says next. At that point, they picked up stones to throw at him. Why? Why so crazy? It's blasphemy, right? I mean, he's 2 words. He said, I am. Big deal. They're going to kill him for that? But it's blasphemy. Because when he said, I am, he was saying, I am God. Yeah, I will be. Yeah? I don't end. I don't depend on anyone. I don't depend on anything. I have always been. I wasn't created by anyone or anything. I created everyone and everything. That's who I am is. The holy, set apart, completely unique, eternal, unchanging, uncaused cause of everything. And he is a much better God than money or success or looks or politics. He created everything, and he is the only qualified judge of his creation. He's the creator, so he's the only qualified judge of creation, and he decides what the real criteria is. He decides what the real lens is. He says who you really are, not your money, not your looks, not your popularity, not your house. He says what you're really worth. He says what your real purpose is. He says what you can do. He says who you can become. We are who I am says we are, because he's the one true God. And we should find our identity. We should find our value, and we should find our purpose, and we should find our potential only in him, not in false gods like money and power and popularity or looks. And I think once we begin that, once we really start to see like who he is, once we see I am, then we can start to ask, how does he see us? Like who does I am say we am? That's important, right? Because the God of height says that I'm above average. You know, I'm better than most of you. The God of height says so, right? The God of money says that I'm probably a little below average in this room, but I'm actually way better than all those poor people in India. Right? The God of popularity says I'm nobody compared to Taylor Swift. Right? If that's God, if how popular you are, she's better than me. She's more important than me. She's more valuable than me. If it's physique, if the God of physique determines our value, I'm better than any of you. Because you saw the picture. Yeah. His voice is the only voice that matters. Money and success and popularity, all that stuff, those things come and go. But I am never changes. On Malachi 3:16, he says, I am Yahweh. I do not change. Hebrews 13:8, Jesus says, Jesus is the same yesterday, today, forever. He is, I am. And in him, we find our true identity. In him, we find our true value. In him, we find our real purpose. And in him, we can see our real potential. So we're going to talk a lot more in the next couple of weeks about who I am says we am. But for this week, let's focus on him. Let's see Yahweh for who he really is. Let's pray. Father, thank you just for who you are. If you never did anything that we could see, if you never blessed us in any way, if you never contacted us, you are Yahweh. You're eternal. You don't change. You're forever. You're always. You depend on nothing. You're completely self-sufficient. You are the only uncaused person or thing or God in the universe. You're the cause of everything. So God, today, before we start even thinking about who we are, will you just help us focus, help us understand a little bit of who you are. This week, through your creation or through people or through your spirit or through your word, will you just begin to reveal to us who you are? We want to know you more. And as we get to know you, God, we're going to ask you to show us who we are in the next few weeks. So thank you for being our God. In Jesus' name, amen.